Here's your host, Holly Signorelli.
Hello, everybody. It's Holly, the Money Therapist, and I am so excited. This is the first episode of the Holly Hour, and I am here to help people just like you save money, build businesses, and eliminate stress. I'm so tired of everybody being stressed about money. It's absolutely become a global problem. People are making all kinds of decisions based on their emotion instead of logic. So I think we need to change the message, because this is like a virus. And when you ignore a virus, it just grows and grows. And I'm watching this middle class disappear. I'm seeing people making hundreds of thousands of dollars and having absolutely nothing to show for it. And I'm seeing these millennials coming in really confused about finances and student loan debt, credit card debt. So let's change the message. Let's talk about money, because people don't want to talk about money, and that's why it's a problem. That's why our emotions are getting the best of us. We want to have nice things, but we're not taking the time to really understand our money or our relationship with money, with our own selves, how we feel about it, how we think about it, how we make decisions about it. And this applies to your business too, how you make business decisions, how you work with your business partners. Did you know that money is the number one reason for divorce? And it's also the number one reason that 80% of businesses go out of business the first year, because they run out of money. They run out of money because they make bad choices. Or maybe they just didn't ask for enough of a loan because they got afraid of the loan instead of actually looking at the logical details of it. Did you know that the number one reason for partnerships going belly up and hating each other's guts is because they fought for the last year about how the money was being allocated? So everything seems to come back to money. And maybe it shouldn't. Maybe it's not supposed to, but somehow it does. So that's, again, why I want to change the message and the communication about money so that we can take things into our own hands. Let's not worry about someone coming into office. I don't care if it's a Democrat or Republican. It keeps getting worse every time anyway. Let's take money matters into our own hands, and not just money, but having a really balanced and stress-free life. So let's talk about, we have got to talk about the Powerball right now.
Yes, we do. And this is Sarah Crilley here with Holly. And I just have to say how excited I am for this show. I mean, you are going to impact so many lives, all this gifts of advice and the thought of abundance. And absolutely, we need to talk about this Powerball. This Powerball is crazy because, oh my goodness, what are we up to now with how much someone could win?
I mean, I think it's still 1.5 billion. Of course, by the time everybody's listening to this, we're going to know who won.
Billion.
It is interesting because it brings up so many subjects around money. And I always say this to people, like, how you save and spend now is how you save and spend when you have a lot more money. Because everybody thinks if they have more money, then everything is going to be just fine. So there's a lot of statistics on this Powerball. Not just Powerball, but, any kind of lottery winner. And a lot of people don't know that 70% of lottery winners are broke and oftentimes in debt between 3 and 5 years. And this includes people that have won the Powerball and have made hundreds of millions of dollars.
You're kidding me. And before we started recording with the show, you were just telling me off the air just about the different choices that they have. They can either get all the money up front or spaces out throughout later and on in life. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, a lot of people don't know that you actually, when they say 1.5 billion, for example, that's over 20 years. But if you take the lump sum, in this example anyway, it would be around 900 million, which is obviously a great number too. So most people are going to take the money up front, because 20 years is unknown. What if something happens and they don't pay you? I don't think that's ever happened, but it is a risk. But most people, and you're going to have to pay taxes on all of it. So even if you got 900 million, you really end up with more like 500 million, which again is still a great number. It's not a problem with me,
I have a question for you, Holly.
Yeah.
This is Kevin E., by the way, real quick. In terms of people, I like to consider myself a frugal guy. I plan accordingly. If you're someone, though, who won this money and you do like the payment plan to stretch it out, and they say that's the best way because it it kind of prevents you from blowing it all at once or getting. But you can still end up in debt, right? Because if you have something like that, you can borrow against that money.
Yeah, you can, just like you see those commercials sometimes. And one of the cases that I read about, I can't remember the exact amount that the guy won, but he had not had money before. He was making something like $250 a week, seriously. And he did the annuitizing, and it was $156,000 a year. So that's a pretty nice amount of money. You got to pay tax on it every year, but you wouldn't have to work, depending on your lifestyle. And he blew through every bit of it and had drug addictions. It's, if you have certain dependencies, vices. So whether your vice is like shoes, for me, or if you have a really bad vice, you're going to have that until you run out of money, because that's kind of how that works. So again, how you save and spend now is how you save and spend when you have money. And really the thing that you have to do is you have to save first. And then you can create a plan for yourself that includes an amount every month that you can blow. You can definitely have fun money and splurge, but take care of the other stuff first. Take care of your responsibilities and setting the money aside so that you do have a future, because again, it's amazing how many people go broke when they have millions or even hundreds of millions of dollars.
Well, that makes me think, Holly, because we're talking about things that maybe we're going to have wealth in abundance, but what about for millennials that don't have, but they think they do? They're tricked because they have credit cards and they feel like they have a lot of money.
Yeah, that's very tempting when you're young to get a credit card and you think, I remember having one also at that age at like 20 or 21, and I remember I had $1,000 on it at the time, which was a lot of money. That was like, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to get out from underneath that? So, people shouldn't even be able to qualify for a credit card at that age unless they're making a reasonable amount of money. But if you're in school, you do not need a credit card. That's the worst way that you could start out your 20s, especially since a lot of kids nowadays have the student loan debt, because unfortunately the cost of college has gone up so significantly that a lot of the millennials now, their parents can't afford it.
I agree with you. I think credit cards are not the best way to go when you're younger and you're not responsible to take care of it.
Yeah, it almost doesn't feel real. Like, it feels like that money is not even there. Like, it was like almost you never really had it. It just doesn't seem real, I think. And that's how people get in over their heads with that.
And I think that they also are under the misconception that they don't have to pay it back or it'll disappear. And the student loan debt doesn't disappear. It stays forever.
What about if you're trying to save and you do have that credit card? What is your advice to saving and building that savings account, but you have your credit card balance?
That's a really important question, because a lot of people do have credit card debt of all ages, and they always want to pay the credit card debt off and then save. So there's two things that happen. One is they never get it paid off because they're not paying enough of it, so they never get around to saving. And also, if all you're doing is going to work to pay down credit card debt, a lot of times, 95% of the time, you get very demoralized, because it's kind of like, oh, you're waking up and not really having anything for yourself. So instead of like splurging on yourself, do something nice for yourself. And then the money that you have left over, maybe split it, just 50-50. Put half of it in your savings and half of it on your credit card. And that's just a real generalization, because if I was talking to someone particularly about their case, I might change the percentage about that. But the main thing is, don't wait to save until your credit cards are paid off, because you'll just never get that savings going. And no matter how little you put in there, when you see it start to rise, suddenly you're going to want to put more in there, and then you'll give up a few other things and still have some nice things for yourself, because that is important.
Gosh, that's such great advice. And then two, what would you say with your paychecks should you be saving? Weekly or monthly?
Yeah, I was going to ask that same thing.
Yeah, I think it would be a lot easier for everyone if they didn't think of things as monthly. So if you get paid weekly or bi-weekly, then take some of that, and everybody knows what their bills are. They really do. They say they don't, but come on, you know how much you make, you know what your check is after the taxes, you know what your rent or your house payment is and your utilities, those basic things. So you have a general idea of what you have left over, and then try to split that up. Again, this is going to be a very, very broad generalization, but maybe cut it up into 5 sections, like the saving, credit card debt, emergency fund. A lot of people forget about that, but sometimes you have a flat tire, you have to get a new tire, just any kind of little thing like that you need to have some money set aside. And then also giving. Giving is it's a great feeling, and no matter how bad you think your situation is, there's so many people out there that have it worse. And of course the other part is going to be doing something for yourself. So it's not that necessarily these need to be the same increments. I'm just offering an alternative to, instead of spending all of it or saving all of it and not having anything good, it's about balance, I think. And once you start anything like that, very simple, you'll start changing the ratios. You'll be like, no, I want to put 30% over here in my savings. And you'll do that on your own because you'll be seeing what's happening, that you'll feel like you've accomplished something.
Gosh, this is such great advice. And you know what, Holly, I just love that you're bringing these conversations just out in the open. Who likes to talk about their credit card? But yeah. I just absolutely appreciate the advice that you've just given me about my personal credit card. So I really needed to hear that. And I love to know that, put money in savings and don't feel like you have to pay off your credit card completely and then put money into savings because you'll be backtracking in a circle.
Yeah. And then just the demoralizing feeling when you're not saving or paying your credit cards fast enough, it kind of just doesn't make you want to wake up and feel passionate about going to work.
Absolutely.
I got one other. My personal credit card situation. I have a quick question. I've never owned a credit card, which I always thought was smart because I never wanted to owe anybody anything ever or pay interest on anything. But then recently I went and bought a car, and they came back to me and they said, they're like, what do you think your credit score is? I'm like, I don't know, probably at least 720. I've been so responsible, paid every bill I ever had. And they're like, yeah, your credit score is zero. Like you have no credit at all. And I had to get a cosigner, and now I'm like, well, maybe I do need to do that. Maybe can you do things like, say you open up a credit card and then like pay your rent with it and then just immediately pay that off and be accumulating good credit?
Well, I'm glad you brought this up because this came up the other day with my stepson because he was buying a car with cash, not a an expensive car, but I told him that. I was like, why don't you take that money that you have and put it like in a little savings account and get a small loan, because with an older car, they don't always give you the full amount of the loan, but that's not the point. Like, let's say they gave you 50% loan on a car that was only $4,000. Then you have the money right there and you auto draft it to pay your car payment, and it's really great on your credit. And also what's really important is if you have no credit, you're probably going to have a high interest rate, but you have to look at the big picture. Don't get caught up in the interest rate, because what's important is within a year or two, your credit you'll have really good credit. And then when you go to the next level car, you'll be able to get a full loan. And interest rates on cars aren't high anyway. So even if it's higher, it's not going to be that bad. But think about the big picture, because sometimes there is a time when it makes sense. Coming up next, Dr. Martin Kassir. I can't wait for you to meet him and talk about dermatology and vanity and travel. All kinds of things coming up on the Holly Hour.
Don't go anywhere. More of the Holly Hour is next on the Real News Communications Network.